Now this is the first video in a 3-part series based on a project that I did with a model and a makeup artist in Manchester at KKS Studios. It was my own project, it was my own theme. I wanted to do fashion, I wanted to do something that was a bit more funky and a bit of a change from what I normally do. I also wanted to make sure that I was the person who's doing all of the styling and the planning behind the shoot and everything else that goes along with it. Part 1, we're going to be looking at some vintage retro fashion type stuff. And then in the second part, we're going to be going into some really funky stuff with loads of accessories and bits and bats. And then in the final video, we're going to be looking at beauty, but a little bit of a twist on the beauty work, using a new modifier that I've not used before and a slightly different light setup from my normal beauty work. Now, a little word about self-styling. It does take a little bit of planning and a little bit of know-how, but it really is not that difficult, especially when you can do a lot of research online, Pinterest, put mood boards together. There's stylists out there that are obviously extremely talented and they put all these looks together, and you can learn a hell of a lot from them if you just look, observe and analyze and then try and apply that to your next shoot. We went to the charity shops because they are full of clothing that are going to be perfect for this kind of theme. Very cheap, very vintage, a whole range of things, and yes, it can take quite a long time. I think we spent the best of about 5 or 6 hours and we went across about 9 or 10 different charity shops. But by the end of the day, I'd spent about £120 and I had bags and bags and bags full of clothing. The next step was to actually organise all of this clothing out into some kind of order, what works well together, and then have that plan ready for the shoot. Now, I don't cross light, so this is where you have lights on the left hand side and lights on the right hand side, and then you're basically lighting from both sides. And I just don't like that light setup. You tend to get weird shadows on the floor, crossing over each other. Now, I chose a large softbox because I wanted the light to spread out and fill the background and give us a nice, even coverage of light. A little tip I want to give you is when you're using softboxes or umbrellas, if you want to get a broader light source, move the light back, move it away a little bit. We were about 2 meters away. This meant that when the light came out, it could spread, it gave you more coverage, it filled top to bottom. Yes, the light becomes less contrasty and it becomes a bit flat. That is where the octabox came in, which, it being a smaller light, would actually create a little bit more contrast on the model's face. And then to add a little bit more contrast into the image, we've got a black V-flat on the right hand side. This is giving us a bit of negative fill and giving us a little bit of definition on the camera right side. Let's head over to Photoshop now. We'll go through the editing process and I'll show you how I went about editing these images. So here we are in Photoshop now. This is a JPEG image. It's shot with the Sony A73 and the G Master, the 24-105 f4 with optical stabilization. You could say the G Masters are the flagship lenses of the Sony system, and I tell you what, they are absolutely fantastic. If you look at the quality of this image in terms of its sharpness, we've used eye autofocus, which is blisteringly fast on the 24-105. We are shooting at f8 here, ISO 100 and 1/160th of a second. Okay, so let's go through the edit. Just as a quick overview, I'm going to fix obviously some skin. I'm going to fix a little bit of hair around here. I'll try and match the colours on the hands, on both hands, and make those consistent. Clean up a bit of the floor around here and also colorise and grade the picture. So let's just start off. We'll make a copy of our layer. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to work on the face. Now I'm going to press the R key and I'm going to rotate the image so the face is like this. This is going to make it much easier for me to actually retouch the skin. I'm working on a more natural orientation of the model's face. And what I will do is I will just simply get the patch tool, and I'm just going to use the patch tool to clean up some areas here. So any scars, anything else I want to remove quickly, I'm going to use the patch tool. Now you can use the healing brush tool, and I often use the healing brush tool, but this time round I wanted to use the patch tool just to show that you can get an equally good result with the patch tool. But really you don't have to use the same tool anyway. You can use
various tools as you're going through the retouching process. Now I'm going to select this line. I'm going to drag it to an area like here, and now it's totally gone. Now I might not want it to be totally gone. I might only want it to be like 70% gone. So what I will do now is I'll hold the Control, the Shift and the F key, and that's brought up the fade command. Fade command's amazing because anything you do, if you press Control Shift F directly after it, you are given the option to fade whatever you've done. So that's 100% faded, and I might only want it like 49%. So I've still kept it there, but it's a little bit less. I can work out these hairs here, pretty straightforward. And you know, I am not the best retoucher by any means, and I'm not the most precise either. I'm actually quite quick, and I can be quite scruffy, and some people might look and go, oh, you know, he's not doing a great job. But for me, I actually know the way the image is going to be viewed, where it's going to be viewed, and the size it's going to be viewed. You are not going to see these micro differences or these areas where it's a little bit sloppy. You will not notice them. They are secondary. You have to remember, this is the picture, right? This is what you have to remember. We are not doing a close-up beauty shot. Therefore, I'm not trying to treat it like a perfect beauty image. Even now I'm actually overdoing it. But in this tutorial, I'm just trying to show you a few techniques as well. Okay, so there you go. I could take out some of these stronger lines underneath, and I'm quite happy with that. Let's just turn that on and turn that off, and that's just using the patch tool. Now, if we look at this face, you can see there are some dark patches, and you know, Ursula's got beautiful skin. You can see even the makeup was very light, but there are some areas here, some patches that we can lighten up. So I'm going to use my frequency separation action, and I'm actually going to include my frequency separation action in this video. So if you're interested in it, just click on the link below and you'll get a free download of it. It's dead easy. You can create your own frequency separation action, but here's the one I use. And I'm going to start off with low frequency. And I'm going to show you a little technique that I use, which is very, very quick. So I'm going to use the brush tool, and this is the mixer brush tool. I'm going to make sure I've got it set to this command here, which is, what's that called? Let's let that hover. Clean the brush after each stroke. And what this is going to allow me to do is, if I just very quickly show you what's going on, the mixer brush tool allows me to push or pull colors into one another. And because I'm actually working on the low frequency layer, it's only going to be dealing with color and tonal information, not texture or detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this is my settings. It's 100% wet, 90% load, mix is about 30. I'll just leave it there. And I'm going to start to pull these lighter areas underneath the darker areas. Okay, so if I just turn that off and on, you can see I've just basically pulled the color even from this part of the face into the darker area. And what this is going to allow me to do is going to allow me to move the values around and smooth out at the same time very, very quickly. Okay. So I'm just, anywhere where it's a bit dark, I'm either pulling in something light, or I'm actually creating a circular motion where I'm kind of almost blurring and smudging those dark areas and removing the patchiness. Okay, so you can see this little dark patch here under the eye. I'll just pull the light area up and it will just soften that a bit. And you have to be careful you don't overdo it, of course, but you know, that will come with practice and time. Oops. What did I get? Soft round yet? Make sure I've got the right brush. Accidentally knocked it. And it's a very progressive, gradual process because I'm just tapping. I'm tapping and I'm pulling, or I'm tapping and I'm pushing, and I'm doing it in a very subtle way. I keep moving from parts all around the face. I don't stick to one area, so I don't want to overdo it. Okay, now if I just turn off that frequency separation, you see we've gone from that to that. Okay, and that's just from like pushing and pulling things around. Okay. Now it's not perfect, but as I said, it doesn't need to be. Okay, we're just working that. I'm going to come down to the low frequency and get back my brush. I'm just going to do a little bit more here. That's where the nose meets. And I can pull this lighter area down as well. So it can also be used almost like dodging and burning, you know, where you darken an area, you lighten it. So I'm just lightening the bridge of the nose by pulling down that highlight that's already there, which is naturally going to create a bit more shape to the nose. This highlight here, the highlight on the lips, I can pull that in. And it's quite nice once you get used to using this. It is almost like painting with light, but essentially you're not painting with light, you're painting with the values, the tones, the colors that are already there. You're just moving them around, blending them in. But the beauty about the frequency separation split is that all the texture is not being affected because it's still on its own layer. Now, if I want to zoom in here and I want to fix this area of the mouth, I can't really do that because I'm using the mixer brush tool on the low frequency. It doesn't deal with things like this high frequency texture. So I have to come to the texture. I'll get the patch tool. I'll select this area here. I'll drag it into this area and I'll drop it. Now, that's obviously blurred everything. So I'll do Command-Shift-F and I'll fade that down a little bit. So a little bit of that texture comes back. Okay. Again, I don't want to be too precise. I'm going to come over here into the eye. I'm now going to use the spot healing brush tool. And I'm just going to draw over the vein in the eye. There. And in here. And this patch in here. Okay. That's just cleaned up the eye a little bit. All right. So there we are in terms of frequency separation, pushing and pulling. Clean that up. And now I want to add a little bit more highlight and shadow to the face. Okay, so what I will do first is I will create a stamp layer. Command Shift Alt and E. And this is, I'll just rename this as FS, frequency separation, as a little point there, and then I will come to FK Sculpt and Contour, and I'll also include this action as well in the download for you. We've got two layers. We've got a brighten layer, and that's just basically a 50% grey layer, which we're going to draw white on. So I'm going to come over to my brush. I'm going to use a regular brush. I'm going to default that back to white. I'm going to use an opacity of 100 and a flow of 3%. And that's like my golden standard. I'm going to make sure I'm on a soft brush. 3% flow. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start to paint. I'm painting with white in the areas that I want to create a highlight. So for me, that's going to be on the nose. As you see, I already did it here just on the cheekbone. I'm going to do it just here under the brow. A little bit in the eyes. Always be careful about how much you whiten eyes. So easy to make the eyes look terrible. I'm going to do it just here on the lip. Anywhere where there is already a natural highlight, I'm going to try and just add to it. Add a little bit here on the chin. And I'm changing the size of the brush depending on the area that I'm working in. Okay, I'm going to just come into the eyelid just there. A little bit in there. Add a little bit more on the nose. And I will zoom out a little bit, and I'm just going to see how that's turned out. Okay, so there's this area here on the cheek. I feel I've gone a little bit heavy. So I'll come to my mask. I'm still on a brush. I'll change that to black, and I'll go 50% on the flow. And I'm just going to, with a big soft brush, just lighten that. That's better. Okay, let's come back here. Let's get our brush. Go back to our 3% flow. I'm going to paint a little bit of light just under the eye here. Let's just see what happened. Yep, see how we just lifted that. A little bit more here. I'm going to bring a bit of this into there. Now I'm going to go to the darken. I'm going to use black this time, still at the same flow. I'm going to just drag a little bit on the cheeks, just under the chin, here, a bit on the lip, just on the eyeshadow a bit, here, and here. I'm going to come back, I'm going to pull back, see what we get. Let's look at the, there we go. I quite like that, I think that looks nice. And then, of course, we can start to clean up hair and so forth. So right at this stage, I'm actually quite happy with the way the skin's turned out. So what I will do is I will kind of merge all of these. Okay, and I'm just going to call this clean skin. I like to keep, the layers as small as possible, the minimum number of layers. And now if you just do a before and after, looks quite nice. Okay, next step is let's work with the hair. This is, dead easy really. I'm just going to use the stamp tool. I'm going to pick a brush which is relatively hard. I'm going to sample the outside area, and then I'm gonna paint, and I'm actually gonna rotate again. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's more natural for my wrist to move in a downward fashion than it is in a kind of upward fashion. I can just pull downwards, and I'm using a Wacom tablet, meaning this is very natural for my wrist. And here I don't want to be curling upwards because again it's not a very natural movement. For me, I'd rather just sweep down. And by doing this, by rotating and getting your wrist in a more natural position, you're actually going to find the stroke that you make is just going to be more fluid, it's going to be more smooth, it's going to be more accurate. I'll just come in here, get the stamp tool, select this blue here, paint this in, I'll resample, paint this in. Take this area. Let's clean up there. Okay, and again, I'm not getting rid of everything. You might want to keep some things. Okay, so that's cleaned up the edges of the hair, so I'm happy with that. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up some of these hairs, because the hair is absolutely perfect, but what's kind of spoiling it are all these cross hairs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the spot healing tool, but I'm going to set this to darken. So this means it's going to darken anything that's light. So if I draw along here, it's only going to darken that light area. And that is quite good because it allows me to work very quickly and not affect too much the areas that are already good. So any crosshair, I'm just going to brush over once. And this is going to kind of make the hair start to look even more perfect and a bit more uniform. Any little areas, see this crosshair here? Let's get rid of that. Now any spots of hair which are standing out in particular that are making the hair not look perfect or look as neat, I can sort out. I can even use the clone stamp tool again, and if I was being really perfect, I could even, let's turn that back to normal. I could even fill this little gap here, like that, and even in here. But I'm kind of getting a little bit over the top here because I wouldn't normally do this because it's not a beauty portrait, it's a fashion shot, and we're going to be here. Okay, let's turn this back the right way, and let's see what we've got here with this face. So before, and with the hair, and this is the after. Before, after. So we're maintaining that natural look, but we're just cleaning it up. Now if we come to the hand, because the hand is in such a prominent place, it's near her face, we would make a mistake if we didn't actually work and fix the hand. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the patch tool first, and this is going to allow me to very quickly remove any major blotches quickly. Take this knuckle area here and just clean up some of these imperfections. Okay, I could use the frequency separation again, come down to the low frequency, select the mixer brush. It should still be at the same settings as before, and then I can start to smooth out the tones of skin here. Any darker areas I can just brush out basically, or any patchy areas I can smooth out really quickly. Try and avoid not making the hand look too fat or too thin. So look, before, after. I can come down to this hand over here. Let's come back to the low frequency, and let's just harmonize some of these things, paint out a little bit of these scars. Let's come back to the patch tool. Let's get rid of some of this. Let's take that, get rid of that. Command Shift F. Let's try that again. Command Shift F. Fade that a little bit. Anyway, I think we're good. Let's just clean that background area. Okay, now you see the floor's an absolute mess. This is where, like, I'll merge all these guys down again. I'm happy with that. This is where I can just very quickly with the patch tool just fix this kind of stuff, this rubbish, this crud on the floor. Because obviously she's standing on the floor, she's been walking on the floor. It's a bit of a mess, but you know, I can clean it up pretty quick. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time because I'm going to show you how I'm going to work with the background as well in a minute. Okay, let's zoom out. Now what you will see, and I'll just type this as retouch. Done. Okay, so that's it as far as retouching her skin and her as a person. I'm not going to liquefy anything. I'm not going to pull anything in or pull anything out. I'm just going to leave it as it is. That's the before, that's the after. What we're going to do is going to work on the background. So this is a little technique I'm going to show you of how I go about working on backgrounds, especially when they are of this color. So what I'll do is I will go to select color range. I'm going to pick this blue here. I'm going to use the add to selection dropper. I'm going to go around and I'm going to hit these areas, and I want to try and get as much of this blue selected. I can use the fuzziness slider to kind of fine tune the selection as best I can. Come into that shadow a little bit. Okay, I'm going to okay that. I've got this selection here. And then what I will do is I will pick the main middle blue of this. You can see the floor's quite light. We've got all these little creases here, which I don't really want. I want it a bit more smoother. I'm going to pick this main blue here. I think this blue around about here is the main blue. And I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to do Alt and Backspace, and I'm going to fill that layer with that blue. I'll do Command deselect, okay? And you'll see there, let's just do the same here. Command Alt Backspace. Let's just make sure we filled all of these edges with that blue. And then what I will do is I will change the opacity of this layer. So that's full opacity. If I come down to, so that's full opacity. Now if I just adjust this down a bit to about 76%, I've managed to actually smooth out the background. Let's bring it down a bit more. About 50%. I've managed to make the background more even, but without removing the shadows. We've maintained some of the shadows and the texture in the paper. So that's just selecting the color range and then tweaking this to 50%. Okay, it's giving us a bit more of a solid color. Now if I was just to change that to hue, you get no difference. So we're going to leave that as normal. Okay. All right. I'm quite happy with that, so I'm going to merge that down as well. So we've gone from this to this. The next stage is obviously color grading, so I'm going to do Command J, and before I do anything, I'm going to lock this layer. So this is retouch, done. And what I would first do is I would actually save this out, file save as, because that is ready to just be posted. Before we even grade anything, that's done. But I'm not going to, I'm actually going to, I'm going to go into filter. I'm going to go into Nick Collection, and I'm going to go into Color Effects Pro 4. Yes, I'm going to use a plugin. Why not? I'm not going to update now. I'll update later. Nick Collection was free for a bit, and then it became a paid app, unfortunately. And what I'm going to actually come over to is I'm going to come to cross-processing. That is here. I'm going to click on these, and I'm going to pick one. And I'm just going to look at some of these. I'm going to see if there's anything that I like, because there may well not be anything that I like. But I always like to just come in and have a play with some of these filters. So we've got this guy here, and let's move the mouse off the trackpad. And the strength is quite strong. Let me bring this right down. Okay, then I'll bring it up a little bit till I find something that I might like. Quite like that. It's given it quite an interesting little colour tweak. I've got all of these different ones I can go through. That one's nice. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Just there. That looks good to me. I'm going to OK that. Apply it. Let that work through. And there we go. We just added this very subtle color grade, kind of warm things up and so forth. Just giving it a nice little bit of saturation. Yep. Now, what else we could do? I could even tweak the colors in the background. If I went to select color range again, that color range from before is still selected. I can come into color balance, and let's go with more of a cyan, right? Let's bring some cyans into this. I quite like using cyan. I'll do that in the midtones. I'll do that in the shadows as well. It's quite nice. Highlights. We're not gonna mess with the highlights because we're gonna mess around too much with the luminosity. We don't want to do that. So we've gone from that to that blue, which is quite nice. Let's just double click on here. Let's see what other options we have. Ah, that's nice, isn't it? Let's bring in the yellow and go with like a turquoise. Yeah, I like that. That looks cool. That's -18. Okay, so we've gone from that to there. Love that. I'm going to Command Shift E. I'm going to merge all that, and this is it. This is done. I'm going to mess about now. Done. And I'll get rid of all of this, and we've got it. So let's start with the beginning. This is where we started, right here. This was the retouch. This was the grade. Let's zoom in. Start, retouch, grade. And done. That's it. Pictures edited. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, the retouch. Hopefully I've not waffled on too much. I will be giving you guys both my frequency separation action and my sculpt and contour dodging and burning action as well. Use them, see how you get on with it. Hopefully you find it useful. If you've got any questions, you know what to do. If you like the video, thumbs up, subscribe, comment, hit the notification. I'll see you in part 2 when we're going to get a little bit more funky. See you later.